Gone Global. Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald. Good evening, everybody. Another day of drama in Westminster. You may look at it as a soap opera. You may view it as a tragedy. But extraordinary events in the House of Commons today. Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor, joins me. Tell us what happened in the House of Commons today.
We had a leak.
A leak?
The roof. Heavy rain in central London, and the roof above the press gallery in the House of Commons, which is behind the Speaker's chair, suffered a huge leak. It happened during a debate on, it was about bench business debate on loans and families finding themselves financially insolvent, and the Deputy Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, had to bring a halt to some proceedings, evacuate the House of Commons chamber. MPs went home early for the day because maintenance staff haven't been able to fix it. But they are working on it, we're told, and so the House can be ready for Monday.
So the roof is literally falling in the House of Commons?
The roof is literally falling in. Obvious comparisons with the political turmoil in Westminster as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, House of Lords. And we've heard so little about the House of Lords in this Brexit debate for many, many months. But they today are debating legislation.
Well, they haven't even got to that stage yet,
Oh, wow.
Nigel. They're still having a debate about whether to debate Yvette Cooper's bill, which passed through the House of Commons in 4 and a bit hours yesterday evening.
By a majority of?
One. So peers in the House of Lords are supposed to be debating it this afternoon, this evening. It could be a long sitting, and then it would go. The idea would be that it would go through all of the stages: second reading, committee stage, report stage, and third reading to receive royal assent from Her Majesty the Queen on Monday, and that would allow Theresa May to put forward a motion to find out exactly what MPs wanted when it came to the extension, and then write to Donald Tusk with that demand.
Yep.
The only problem for Remain peers in the House of Lords is that a number of noble lords and ladies like Lord Lilly and Lord Forsyth are tabling a number of amendments about whether they should be debating it in the first place, and if so, how long it should go on for. And it's all filibustering to make the debate go on and on and on through tonight, through Monday. And so it could only realistically receive royal assent on Tuesday. And then, of course, Theresa May would have to put down a motion in the House of Commons so that MPs could tell her what to do. But they need to do that the day before.
Now, in the House of Commons, you can't filibuster. You can't just talk out something because there is a guillotine and but in the House of Lords, is there no such rule?
No, there isn't. And, of course, the Speaker who sits in the Woolsack, doesn't have the control that the Speaker, John Bercow, enjoys in the House of Commons. And so what will happen is if this debate goes on, they will run out of time to pass the bill into law, which would force Theresa May to bring forward a motion which MPs could agree to before the requisite 48 hours notice sent by Donald Tusk, the President of the European Council, who represents the 27 other EU nations.
So that would mean Mrs May would go to if the House of Lords were able to talk this through all the way, that would mean Mrs May going to the summit with no deal effectively still being on the table.
Yes, and she could reject, if the European Council give her an extension with caveats, an extension with stringent demands, she would still have the ability as Prime Minister to unilaterally reject it there on the spot as the Prime Minister of this country under the royal prerogative. What Yvette Cooper's bill does, if it's passed into law, it would force Mrs May to accept it, to accept whatever the European Council offer, come back to the House of Commons on the Thursday, and then pass it through the House of Commons during a debate on Thursday in order to stop a no-deal Brexit on the Friday.
Extraordinary. And now, one last quick thing, Theo. A confirmatory referendum. You know, Keir Starmer going into number 10, these talks now going on between the Conservative and Labour parties, and him basically saying, yes, a confirmatory referendum was among the ideas on the table for discussion. Is it, I mean, I know Philip Hammond also, and we'll have a listen to him a bit later on, but could Mrs May possibly sign up to this?
No, not and keep her party together. The really interesting thing about the row within the Labour Party on a second referendum, and you've also got Emily Thornberry writing to MPs saying that there needs to be a confirmatory vote with Remain on the table. And then on the other side, you have 25 Labour MPs writing to Jeremy Corbyn saying that he mustn't sign up to a second referendum. And what this does is it puts Jeremy Corbyn under an immense amount of pressure to find an agreement within his own party, and something that all sides can sign up to when as you know, for so long he has managed to balance the two off, to play the two off much, much better than Theresa May. But it would force him to make a decision. And what that means, Nigel, is it puts pressure on Corbyn not to agree a deal with Theresa May. Because if he agrees a deal with Theresa May, whether it be a compromise and she concedes on the customs union, then he would be under pressure to put a confirmatory vote within that deal as one of his conditions. Now, if that doesn't happen, he's going to infuriate a whole section of his party. And so actually what's happening, and what's very interesting, I think, is that by this row within the Labour Party about a second referendum is actually making it less likely that Jeremy Corbyn, for his part, can find an agreement with Theresa May. And I'm also hearing Theresa May, given the rumpus in the Conservative Party yesterday, the row that went on in the 1922 Committee of Conservative MPs yesterday, has backed away from that statement that she gave on Tuesday evening, where she implied that she'd be willing to budge on her red lines around the customs union.
Theo, thank you. Well, we've heard the Prime Minister many times, of course, shifting her red lines and changing her position. But isn't it interesting? You know, we've got Keir Starmer saying that from his perspective, a confirmatory referendum is on the table. And here was Philip Hammond last night on ITV.
It's a perfectly credible proposition. I mean, some ideas have been put forward which are not deliverable. They're not negotiable. But the confirmatory referendum idea, many people will disagree with it. I'm not sure there's a majority in Parliament for it, but it's a perfectly credible proposition, and it deserves to be tested in Parliament.
A perfectly credible proposition. Well, if you're asking yourselves, what is this confirmatory referendum that the Chancellor is talking about and that the shadow Brexit Secretary Sir Keir Starmer is talking about, let me enlighten you. It would be a referendum in which the choice was to vote for Mrs May's deal/treaty with a slightly changed political declaration, and the other choice would be Remain. That's right, Mrs May's treaty or Remain. Either the existing European treaty or the ghastly new one the Prime Minister wants us to sign up to. Now, I'm asking you, would you like to see a confirmatory referendum? And if you think, yep, it'll sort the whole thing out, call 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think it will just lead to further division in the country and is a bad idea, text to 84850. Let me ask you, if the choice was her deal plus the customs union in perpetuity against Remain, would you take part? Would you vote? Or would you feel the question itself was an insult? Please let me know by tweeting using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course Facebookers, you can comment too. I think the whole thing is an outrageous idea. I hope it doesn't get off the ground. Sophie is a first-time caller from Wakefield. Good evening, Sophie.
Hello, Nigel. How are you?
I'm okay, but if we have a confirmatory referendum, I'm going to get very, very upset.
Well, your researcher has just asked me, and I've said yes until I realised that there are only two options, which is, again, as divisive as the binary option of yes or no to leave the EU. In fact, if they're the only two options on the table, then they will be exactly the same as staying in the EU in our current position, because we're caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, frankly, if Theresa May could channel the spirit of Margaret Thatcher, she would then be able to tell the EU where to go, using two letters of the phonetic alphabet.
Yes.
And I think that for the MPs to remove the option of no deal from any confirmatory vote, if that does go ahead, is absolutely appalling.
Yeah, and no deal, I don't know whether you sense this, Sophie, in Wakefield, but no deal is getting a lot more popular amongst the public.
Oh, absolutely, because despite a lot of Remainers thinking that Brexiteer voters didn't know what they were voting for, they certainly knew that we didn't want to be in the EU on any count at all. And I find it terribly frustrating. Now, I've been watching the House of Lords this afternoon, and Lord Lilly and Lord Hamilton of Epsom have stood up and are saying that to put the Yvette Cooper bill forward for agreement would be wrong for the Constitution of the way that the House of Commons and the Lords behave, so to speak. And and the non-contents have gone against Lord Robathan's amendment, so they're now having to debate it in full today.
Yes, and there could be a filibuster, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not a great fan of the House of Lords, Sophie, but it is interesting. So, Sophie, let's be clear. A confirmatory referendum with those two choices, would you vote?
I would end up spoiling the ballot paper saying no deal, tick box.
Got it. Thank you, Sophie. That was great. Going to Aldershot to speak to Matthew, another new caller. Good evening, Matthew.
Evening, Nigel.
So, here we have the Chancellor saying it's a perfectly credible idea. Keir Starmer saying it's on the table in these negotiations. Do you think a confirmatory referendum is what we need?
I think it is what we need, but I don't think, even though I voted Remain, I don't think Remain should be an option. I think the fact that we've sort of gone through this process of deciding that we're going to negotiate a deal means that that should be the choice. It should be no deal or Theresa May's deal, whatever she ends up coming with. Because this way we'll now know what we're voting for when we say to leave. Because even though you say, people voted to leave, let's just leave. But the fact that we've decided to negotiate something means that we should be given the choice of those two things. I don't think Remain should be an option, though, even though I voted for it.
OK, so Matthew, you think we should have a referendum that said leave with Mrs May's treaty or leave with no deal?
Yes, absolutely.
And you think there's an appetite for that?
I think there is, mainly amongst sort of hard levers like yourself. I'm sure you just mentioned that there's a growing appetite for a no deal. I think that would get some support, but I think the majority of Remainers would get on side with Theresa May's deal, as that's the softer Brexit.
So it would. So actually, it could be quite a good debate in your view.
I think it would, because again, you'll just try and find the compromise of the Leavers wanting to.
Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But what they're talking about, what Starmer is talking about, what Lord Adonis is talking about, and indeed what Philip Hammond is talking about, is Remain against her treaty. That would be an outrage and affront to democracy, wouldn't it?
Affront to democracy might be a tad too far, but yeah, it's not something I personally go for. Like I said, even though I vote Remain, I think some positives will come from Brexit. I don't know what or how or for how long, but I think some positives will come, so we should leave and just try and make the best of it.
Matthew, thank you. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 6:15, and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
Downing Street says negotiating teams from the government and Labour have completed 4.5 hours of talks to find a way forward on Theresa May's Brexit deal, calling the discussions detailed and productive. The teenager who admitted abducting and murdering a 6-year-old girl on the Isle of Bute last year is appealing his life sentence. 3 prison officers who subjected teenagers to abuse at a youth detention centre in County Durham during the 1970s and 80s have been jailed for more than 14 years. LBC weather, rain continuing across western parts of England and northern Scotland through tonight. Clearer elsewhere, a low of 3 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. The A2 eastbound is blocked because of an accident between the Ebbsfleet turnoff and tollgate services in Gravesend. There are now queues from the Falkerwood interchange. There were queues on the M25 anti-clockwise from junction 15 for the M4 round to junction 12 for the M3. That's after a car was on fire earlier on. Also anti-clockwise on the M25. It's slow because the car's broken down on the exit slip road at junction 25 for Enfield, so one lane is closed. London Bridge stays closed in both directions. That's because of a private hire taxi demonstration. And the A41 Finchley Road stays closed both ways between Swiss Cottage and Hampstead. It's because of a serious accidents. There are delays through Kilburn and St John's Wood.
This is LBC.
Protecting your business from cybercrime is a growing priority, yet understanding how to stay ahead of potential threats is challenging. Whether you're a startup or an established business, BT is here to help. With a wide range of security-embedded products and services built especially for businesses. Find out more and enter to win a Pixel 3 smartphone plus a Google Home Hub at lbc.co.uk. BT, helping business relationships stay on track.
I want Poppy to play cricket for England.
I want Sam to stop screaming.
I want Joe to live a little.
I want Naomi to live a lot.
I want Becky to invent a cure for the common cold.
Whatever the future holds for your children, Vitality Life Insurance want to make it happy, healthy and secure. So when you take out our Wellness Optimizer, you'll get up to 40% off your life insurance premiums.
I want the twins to keep on being happy.
I just want whatever the twins are on.
Just search Vitality Life Insurance. Additional product, minimum monthly premiums and conditions apply.
Do you need an alternative to your bank to secure finance? Well, Finance for Business are the brokers who can help you access it, allowing you to expand your property portfolio, to buy properties in need of refurbishment or development, or downsize and buy the dream home before your old house sells. Broking is the new banking, and Finance for Business are the brokers you can rely on. Search Finance for Business for details. Your home may be at risk of repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on a mortgage or any other loan secured on it.
Brain cells!
Why is Hunch so happy?
It's the Grand National Festival.
I know, but he's not usually.
Yeah, Betway have got money back as a free bet if you lose. Available on the first ITV race every day. I should get a new suit. Maybe a bow tie.
Free bets. A hunch unleashed.
Every day at the Grand National Festival is a happy hunch day. Shall we give him the stats for the next race?
As soon as he stops cartwheeling.
Heed your hunch with Betway. This week at the Grand National Festival.
Min stake £2. Max free bet per race £10. One free bet per customer per race. First eligible bet qualifies. Selected bets. Full T's and C's apply. 18 plus. Bet the responsible way.
On Little Spring Spotters today, we're looking at nature at its very sweetest.
That's Celebrations Easter Mix, just £2.99. Thornton's Harry Hopalot Chocolate Bunny for £3.99. And Cadbury's Mini Eggs are only 99p.
Did I say sweetest? I meant chocolatiest.
Lidl. Big on quality, little on price.
Subject to availability. Selected stores excludes NI.
A lot of Londoners aren't happy about the ultra-low emission zone. We talked to some of them.
£12.50 is an absolute liberty. Are they taking a...
Renault Zoe.
It's a joke, mate. Trying to charge people extra money for driving in the city, but...
Renault Zoe.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just an absolute...
Renault Zoe.
It really is.
Keep it clean with the all-electric Renault Zoe. 0 tailpipe emissions, 0 ULEZ charge. Search Renault Zoe.
At Wix, right now, there's buy one, get one free on all timber deck boards. In-store and online at wix.co.uk. Ends Monday. Terms apply.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag #FarageOnLBC.
A confirmatory referendum. Well, the Chancellor of the Exchequer thinks it's a perfectly credible idea, and indeed Sir Keir Starmer, going into Downing Street today, said it was on the table for discussions as a means to getting an agreement with the Conservative government and changing the political declaration. Is it what you want? Michael on Facebook says we should be having a second referendum to dissolve Westminster. I think that view's growing. Pamela says we don't need another referendum. I'd prefer a general election. Maybe that wouldn't solve anything either. And Mark says what I think. Absolutely. You can't have a second vote on the same issue until you implement the result of the first. And I do really, really agree with that. Some here, I'm a proud leaver again on Twitter, but I'm happy for a second vote. Remain or leave with no deal. Yeah, but that, I'm afraid, is not what's being proposed. And I think if they really think they can get away with firstly keeping Remain on the ballot paper, but secondly not having a proper credible leave option, I think that would be an outrage. Let's go to Katie, who's calling from Hertfordshire. Good evening.
Hello, Nigel.
Hi there. So, are you up for a confirmatory referendum?
I can't even. Just the thought, quite frankly, it's making me so angry. There's no way any of this should be happening. None of it at all. We had our referendum. If what I believe is that Cameron absolutely believed that he would win a Remain vote. That's why he was so blasé about doing a referendum in the first place. And they were shocked to the core when the Leavers actually won the vote. Yep. And now we've had to put up with all these shenanigans ever since. And I don't believe for a second there should be a second referendum, whatever referendum they want to call it. We should be leaving. We should have left last Friday without a shadow of a doubt, with no deal. I mean, why? The reason they didn't have a deal in the first place was because they genuinely thought they were going to win it.
Well, I agree with that. I agree with that.
You know, they're trying to scupper. Or, you know, it just makes me so wild. It really does. So angry.
And when the Chancellor of the Exchequer says... Well, firstly, he backs this idea, basically, of a confirmatory referendum. But when he says that leaving with no deal would be catastrophic for jobs and the economy, I mean, how do you respond to that?
Well, just like everybody else. For one, I've got no time for the Chancellor anyway. Got no interest in what he's got to say. And what annoys me is you've got all these people in Parliament that are rattling on, just like he's rattling on, about... because they want to remain.
Yep.
They want to remain.
Yeah,
They've always wanted to remain.
Of course they do.
Now, as far as I'm concerned, we should be going on I'm angry that they had this vote last night in Parliament for this to go through to the Lords today, right? Got no time for House of Lords whatsoever anyway.
Nor have I anymore.
But what really made me annoyed was not only because it was just one vote, but that MP was allowed to vote when she's got a criminal conviction. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yes,
it's
this was the Peterborough MP who is tagged and has a criminal conviction and voted, and of course, they won by one vote to try, the attempt to scupper no deal and have an extension. The slight counter-argument is one of the Conservatives on the other side had a problem with expenses, a conviction for expenses. But look, I get the point, thank you, I get the anger too. Chris says to me, another vote, no chance. If they do this, and the question is May's treaty or stay in the EU, I'm not voting, mate. Well, I think, Chris, a lot of people, I'm afraid, would feel like that. There is no way, Gary says to me on Twitter, our pro-Remain Parliament is going to tolerate a second referendum without Remain on the ballot paper. That may be true, Gary, but there has to be, does there not, if this is coming, a credible Leave alternative, not this appalling treaty of Mrs May's. Steve is a new caller from Blackpool. Good evening, Steve.
Evening. How are you?
I'm well. Welcome to the show. So, do you think that a second referendum is the way out of this?
I do. I'm a hardened Brexiteer. I believe that we should have left immediately with no deal. Mm-hmm. And the question of leaving, in my mind, has already been answered.
Yes.
We've had the referendum and the people chose to leave. So it's not a question of remaining or leaving. The only questions on the ballot paper should be leave with no deal or leave with a government-arranged deal. And that should be it.
OK, so...
Because the question of leaving has already been answered.
Yeah, so really, Article 50. Because Article 50, which 500 MPs voted for, said that you leave with a withdrawal agreement or without one, and that's what you'd like to see tested, yeah?
Yeah, and that's what we should vote on. That's what the people should vote on. Not whether we want to leave at all over again, because that's a rerun of the initial referendum. And I think it's undemocratic of a country to turn around and say, oh, well, basically, we think that the people got the wrong decision last time.
Yeah.
So before we've implemented that vote, we're going to ask you to vote on it again.
And Steve, tell me, how angry are you feeling about this?
Well, extremely angry. And I think that the problem is it's going to lead to a Pandora's box, because people, I'm in Blackpool, which is north of England, people are going to get disenfranchised with the mainstream politics, and then all it needs is for someone to stand up and say, Labour and Conservative don't listen to you. They don't respect your vote. They're only in it because they're in self-interest. Vote for me and I will represent you. And I can honestly see that we will get, if they cancel Brexit, we will honestly get, I think, our first BNP politician. Well, because people will be so turned off by Labour and Conservative.
Steve, if we come to that, I'll do my best to make sure that doesn't happen, all right, by making sure people can vote for something that is respectable but defends leave. Steve, thank you very much. Some support coming in for a second referendum. Yes, says Tony, another referendum in 40 years. Nigel, I've changed my mind, and I really do now see the reason for a second referendum, but not until 2064. Look, I have to say, I think a second referendum, once the first one's been implemented, and the country's had a few years to look at it, I think that is a valid proposal. But any form of second referendum before you've enacted the first one is wrong. And I have to say, this confirmatory referendum, this stitch-up they want to put to us of Remain or sort of Remain, frankly isn't good enough. Phil is a new caller from Potter's Bar. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
Welcome. Well, like some of the callers so far, pretty angry. But, Phil, tell me, how do you feel?
Well, I think when you look at this, take a step away. Forget that you're a leaver for 1 second, Nigel.
Okay, right, I'll try.
Do your best. If you look politically at what's happening, our House of Representatives, the House of Commons, is utterly broken over this particular topic. Now, where do you turn from there? And as far as I can see, constitutionally, there are only really two places to go. One is you could ask the Queen to make a decision, but I think we all appreciate that would be grossly unfair. Second, you have to go back to the people. So, but I think if you go back to the people, there are probably, it is a 3 or 4 option referendum. You must have no deal on the ballot, absolutely, and you have to have Remain on the ballot. And then the nice thing is those two are very clear, they're unequivocal. Everyone now understands what we mean by those two terms. You probably have Theresa May's deal, which is somewhat close to no deal, and then perhaps there is this sort of customs union, common market nonsense, which pleases nobody and would be an utter disaster.
But Phil, here's the problem with that here we are, being asked to make the decision again. If you've got 4 options, no one of them will command 50%. And so how will it...
It doesn't need to, Nigel. There's many ways to deal with that. Firstly, you do a simple ranked preference. People put 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
You count up who gets the least ones. You knock them out. It's a preferential vote, right?
I understand that, Phil, but
many times it works.
I understand that, Phil, but still, the first preference choice is not going to be one on its own that commands a majority.
No,
and I think there's a problem with that.
But that's the way many elections work all over the world. Look at many presidential elections. You have a number of candidates, they get ranked, you end up with 2, and people's second choices. So everybody's vote counts, and people should, in theory, end up with their least undesirable choice, if you can put it that way.
If any second referendum, Phil, delivered a result back to Parliament that said leave, do you think they'd actually honour it second time round?
I honestly think they would. So
really?
I am as you probably sensed, I am a Remainer. However, if in that instance the vote was no deal, I would be there and say, do you know what? Everyone understands now all these objections people have got with people not knowing what they're talking about. Don't buy any of it. I mean, there's one other little silver lining as well, which I think you'll probably scoff at.
Go on then, cheer us all up. Go on then, Phil.
If you go down this road, it is not impossible that the EU, having seen the precipice that collectively we came so close to, they may finally cough up, particularly as we know they're about to go through a ridiculously volatile period with dealing with lots of other anti-EU partisan crowds across Europe. They might finally cough up some concessions that David Cameron should have gone and got however many years ago it was. So you never know.
I don't think they will, Phil. In fact, I think the opposite. I think they've got their treaty. Monsieur Barnier walks around with it proudly under his arm, and I don't think they're going to budge an inch. Phil, thank you for your call, and Phil's idea there that you have several choices and rank preferences. I don't think that solves anything. But hey, what on earth are we talking about? A confirmatory referendum backed by the Chancellor of the Exchequer that would not give us a proper leave option and keeps Remain on the ballot paper. Outrageous. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 6:30 in time for the news with Lisa Aziz.
25 Labour backbenchers have written to Jeremy Corbyn warning against the inclusion of a second referendum in any Brexit compromise negotiated with the government, saying it would simply divide the country further. Downing Street's confirmed teams from both sides completed 4.5 hours of talks today, trying to find a way forward on Theresa May's deal, calling the discussions detailed and productive. The teenager who admitted abducting and murdering a 6-year-old girl on the Isle of Buse is appealing his life sentence. 16-year-old Aaron Campbell was jailed in March for at least 27 years for killing Alicia McPhail last summer. Thousands of tube workers are going to be asked if they want to go on strike over their pay. RMT union members in London will vote in the coming weeks on whether to start industrial action. LBC weather: rain continuing across western parts of England and the far northeast of Scotland overnight. Clear and cold with patchy frost elsewhere, a low of 3 degrees.
LBC at the weekend. Matt Fry.
Is our parliamentary democracy in Great Britain in peril?
No, just think back. The miners' strike. Very bitter.
I'm confused now, Lord Heseltine, because on one hand, you're coming up with the worst examples of where we might head in history. On the other hand, you're saying perhaps it's not quite as bad as something that you've experienced yourself. What is it?
Leading Britain's conversation. Matt Fry. Saturday mornings from 10 on LBC.
You know your business. What keeps you up at night, and the moments that make it all worthwhile. You know your 5-year plan, and that you really want to be there in 2. We know we can help you get there. Barclays offers unsecured loans of up to £100,000 that can be with you in days, or even hours. To apply for a loan that's right for your business, search Barclays Business Loans. Let's go forward. Subject to status, T's and C's apply, guarantee may be needed.
Yeah, it's a great little property.
Oh, that's good. What period is it?
It's Vic Georgian, actually.
Vic Georgian?
Yeah, it's pretty modern.
How many bedrooms?
7.
7?
3.
When you choose a domain name, choose .com. It's trusted, recognised and reliable. You see, a business without .com is like an estate agent without the details.
OK, what's it on for?
150k, give or take 100.
Visit don'tbewithout.com to register yours now, because without.com, something's missing.
Oh, I found one of our new Vauxhall Griffin editions.
Yes. What comes as standard?
Standard? Well, alloy wheels, sat-nav, aircon, DAB radio, Bluetooth, smartphone projection and USB connection.
Wow. Is that everything?
Sorry, forgot the colour touchscreen.
Buy a new Griffin edition, Adam, Astra, Corsa or Mocha X Plus and get a whole host of features as standard. The Griffin edition range. All Griffin, no bull. Visit your nearest retailer now. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903. Participating retailers only. Limited units while stocks last.
Your business has come this far, but now's your time to soar into the skies of spectacular with a fast, affordable Funding Circle business loan. With decisions in as little as 24 hours and a dedicated account manager, there's no waiting around. So join the thousands of businesses who have taken out a Funding Circle loan and help your business fly. Apply today at fundingcircle.com. Authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. T's and C's apply.
Is your company planning to move to a new office within the next year? Do you want new IT, audiovisual, networks and phone systems to perform better than in your current building? Do you need independent help designing latest generation technology for your office space, meeting rooms or data center? At Coleman Bennett, we have successfully completed more than 400 corporate relocations, so you can trust Coleman Bennett to enable your new office, on time and on budget. Search Coleman Bennett today.
Is your money working hard enough? Think about it. Are you making the most of your tax-free ISA allowance? No? Then it's time to Wealthify. Just start your stocks and shares ISA with Wealthify before the 5th of April and make the most of your tax-free allowance. It's time to beat the ISA deadline. It's time to Wealthify. For more information, download the app or visit wealthify.com today. With investing, capital is at risk and you could get back less than you put in.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
I'm beginning to wonder if MPs inhabit a different planet to the rest of us, because as the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the shadow Brexit Secretary start talking very publicly about a confirmatory referendum, a second referendum between Remain and Mrs May's new treaty with a slight change to the political declaration, I wonder whether they actually understand what is going on out there in the country. And I've been saying to you for the last couple of weeks that there is a massive shift out there towards no deal. People have simply had enough. They want to leave. And backing that up, today, a YouGov poll out today, every region of England and Wales, apart from London, is happy to leave the European Union without a deal if no agreement is reached by April the 12th. In the Midlands and Wales, 46% favoured no deal, while 31% just wanted to remain, according to YouGov. In the South, 44% backed no deal, 34% were for remaining, and in the North, 41% backed no deal, 34% want to remain. The only exception being, of course, London, where 26% want no deal and 48% want to remain. What is happening out there, folks, is a massive shift. People just want to leave, and that is happening at the very moment when our politicians are doing, in my opinion, their best to betray that vote. At some point, something here has got to give. A second referendum should be identical to the first, is what Irina thinks on Twitter. Well, I don't want a second referendum, but I would prefer a rerun of the original question to this confirmatory referendum, which would not give leavers a proper option. It would be an outrage, and I honestly predict you'd get the lowest turnout you've ever seen. People just would not engage with that. They wouldn't be able to see the point of it. It must be stopped as an idea. Rick says, how can you have a second referendum without leave on the paper, ? Well, I mean, there we are, I agree. Julian asks, where are our top lawyers and judges? They need to be looking at our voting slips. There was nothing stating Parliament could overrule our vote. No, there wasn't, Julian, but there is the UK Constitution, and legally it could be argued that the referendum wasn't binding, although they did tell us, didn't they, in that leaflet that nice Mr Cameron sent through every front door in this country, that they would implement it. Steve is a first-time caller from Monmouthshire. Good evening, Steve.
Good evening, Mr Farage.
Welcome. So, is a confirmatory referendum the way forward?
I liked a lot about what your previous caller, Phil, said. I agree with much of what he put forward. I hadn't thought about it in those terms before, but makes a lot of sense.
Now, the Electoral Commission, previously, when they were asked about referendums, did make it very clear in their guidance that they thought a referendum should be a very clear choice between two options, effectively a binary choice. And I just wonder, given that's what they've said, whether they would even allow a referendum with a series of choices.
Okay, that's another debate that could go on for hours. But I'd like to come back to this no deal scenario, if I may.
Yeah, do. Did you just hear the polling that I read out?
Yeah. I also found out that was 77%. So I was wondering what the other 33% was.
They were
from the South Wales point of view.
Yeah, they were don't knows. So if you took out the don't, so if you took those out, what you see is no deal with massive leads.
Yeah, but
massive leads.
There's a third, 33%, who haven't made their mind up yet.
Yes, or perhaps wouldn't vote. We don't know. Steve, we don't know. But what I'm saying to you is that 2 or 3 months ago, no deal wasn't that massively popular. Now it is, because people have had enough of political shenanigans. They just want this over and done with so we can get on with the rest of their lives. That's why the polling's saying that, Steve, isn't it?
Unlike most politicians and most radio presenters, I'm not an expert on everything. But if I can just focus on one aspect of what a no deal would mean to farmers, okay? Mm-hmm. To the farming community. And these aren't my figures. These are figures produced by the NFU. Beef farming is worth £3 billion to the UK economy. Beef farming is worth
Steve, I know all this, but I'm actually not debating no deal. I'm debating whether we should have a confirmatory referendum. I know that in the short term, things could be very tough for the farmers if we leave with no deal. Those exporting meat, particularly. I acknowledge that point. I get it, but it's not the debate for now. I'm going to move on to Andrew, a first-time caller from Tilchester. Good evening, Andrew.
Hello, Nigel.
Hello there. So, confirmatory referendum, is that going to sort the whole thing out, Andrew?
Definitely not. Definitely not. It's basically just a Remainers referendum. There's two Remain subjects, but made for so the Leavers would not vote for it. That's just my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. Well, but of course, Andrew, if they were to put forward a question without a proper leave option, I would like to see an amendment that was put down to that said there had to be a minimum turnout, let's say, of 45% or 50% of voters, because otherwise, it would be invalidated effectively, wouldn't it, by people like you not bothering?
Well, yeah, pretty much.
Well, do you think they could foist it upon us?
Yes.
Well, I hope you're wrong, Andrew. But you would stay at home, yeah?
But I'm pretty sure they'll try and do it.
Well, let's see, Andrew, I thank you. Irene says, let's demand to have a confirmation on the last general election. Referendums are usually once-in-a-generation events. I can't see it being seriously considered, but you never know with May. She's crossed so many lines already. Wayne, I agree with that. She really has crossed so many lines already. If a referendum came about, I'd find myself in the unfathomable position of voting Remain because I want to leave and May's treaty cannot be allowed to pass under any circumstances. I'd rather remain with the option to leave than be in a customs union dead end with no way out. I dare them to put no deal on the ballot paper. And Lee in Bournemouth is representing a point of view that I've heard from actually some people who really back the Leave campaign in a big way. There are some, I'm not one of them, but there are some who think that actually, in many ways, it might be better to remain than accept Mrs May's new treaty. Let's go to Adrian, a first-time caller from Sutton. Good evening, Adrian.
Hi, good evening, Nigel. How are you doing?
We're doing all right. I love the way they use this word confirmatory referendum, but try and hide the real option they want to give us, Adrian.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what, if there is no option given to say that, what 17.4 million people voted for in the ballot paper, I will really go and cast my vote as a protest vote. So I will either put a blank or I will write it on the ballot paper, no deal, cross it, and I put it. because I will not stay at home wasting my vote.
Do you think, Adrian, a lot of people would go and spoil their papers?
I think so. Everyone should do that, because in this way, the establishment and this corrupted political MPs and everybody will find out how the 17.4 million people feel and how they can change everything.
Well, I have to tell you,
Yeah.
I think you've convinced me, because I was thinking, if this ridiculous confirmatory referendum did not give me a proper choice, I was thinking of going down the pub for the day. But I think you've convinced me that actually turning up and using my vote, even if it is a blank or a small paper, is right. The trouble is, Adrian, that Remain would win, wouldn't it, in those circumstances?
Yeah, that's what, because it doesn't matter, Nigel, because if they win, because we are the people who are not going to go and fight and again topple the result and, what they did for the leave. So
we write no deal on our ballot papers, and when they announce the result, there are more spoiled papers than there are votes for Remain. Yeah, I think in many ways you may be right. Let's hope it never comes to that. Terry is a first-time caller from Kent. Good evening, Terry.
Good evening, Nigel.
Welcome. So, the Chancellor of the Exchequer says it's a perfectly credible idea, Terry, to have a confirmatory referendum.
Look, my view is we voted, you get one stab at it, we should have done what it said on the tin, we leave. Now, you can't say, go and do it again. What if, is that going to open up for Scotland to do another vote until the vote goes in their favour? We've done it. That's the rule. That's how it should be done. At the end of the day, my view is that I don't trust any of them politicians.
Right.
Because they're too Remain biased. I feel like Mrs May's taken us down that route, knowing if she goes to a dead end, it'll kick off a Remain action. But the thing is, aren't the politicians meant to be in power, not to damage the country? They have damaged the country severely. It's irreparable what they've done.
Well, I think what they've damaged, Terry, I think, is trust between voters like you and them.
Exactly. I won't vote again. I will never vote again.
But Terry, Terry, I completely understand what you're saying, and I know there are huge numbers of people right now saying they will never vote again. But if you don't vote again, they'll go on winning, won't they?
But then we need a credible opposition that's not either of the parties that I've voted for all my life.
Well, Terry,
now's the time.
do you know what? I think I agree with that, and it's very difficult to change British politics. It's very difficult to think outside the two parties that have dominated it for the last 100 years. But if ever it was going to happen, it could happen over Brexit and over the next couple of years. Terry, thank you. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 6:45, and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
Downing Street says negotiating teams from the government and Labour have completed 4.5 hours of talks to find a way forward on Theresa May's Brexit deal, calling the discussions detailed and productive. The teenager who admitted abducting and murdering a 6-year-old girl on the Isle of Bute last summer is appealing his life sentence. Thousands of tube workers in London are going to be asked if they want to go on strike over their pay. LBC weather, rain continuing across western parts of England and northern Scotland through tonight. Clearer elsewhere, a low of 3 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. There are queues on the M20 eastbound. Lanes closed at junction 3 for the M26 because of an accident. There are long delays on the A2 eastbound from the Falkerwood interchange to Tollgate Services in Gravesend. That's after an accident earlier on. All the lanes are open. It stays slow on the M25 anti-clockwise from junction 15 for the M4 to junction 12 for the M3 after a car was on fire earlier on. The A23 Streatham High Road northbound is blocked because of an accident outside the Odeon Cinema. There are delays on the approach. London Bridge stays closed in both directions because of a private hire taxi demonstration. And the A41 Finchley Road stays closed in both directions between Swiss Cottage and Hampstead because of a serious accident.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. There will be no Brexit phone-in on the programme tonight.
Ian Dale on LBC.
From big business owner to small startups, the LBC Business Hour with BT answers all the questions you may have.
When it comes to selling your startup business, nobody can actually have that passion that you've got for it yourself. For me, that's why the startup failure rate is high, because they don't know how to market and sell themselves.
Join Ian Dale every Thursday evening from 8 for the LBC Business Hour with BT, helping you to be there for the moments that matter in business and LBC.
Some things are never coming back, like avocado bathrooms, dinosaurs, and fingers crossed, the mullet. But a lost credit card, they often turn up. Thankfully, with a simple tap, the NatWest app lets you lock your card if you misplace it and unlock it if you find it. We're always thinking of new ways to make it easier to control your banking. Search NatWest Easier Banking. NatWest, we are what we do.
MasterCard credit cards only. App eligibility criteria applies.
Many dentists refer their own patients onto Darwood and Tanner.
My name is Dr. Mark Kent. I'm a general dental practitioner practicing in a North London suburb. Darwood and Tanner have become my preferred referral practice. I feel that Dr. Andrew Darwood can provide the highest level of implant surgery that is available, together with giving my patients the option of alternative specialist treatments.
Download your information pack today. Search Darwood and Tanner. Your smile is our healthy obsession.
Set for Life is the new game from the National Lottery where you can win 10 grand every month for 30 years. So now you can jump into June, make October a scream, and stick a rocket up November. Make every month amazing. Play new Set for Life Mondays and Thursdays. Amazing starts here. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The great British weather. One day you're cozying in with the family, the next you're chilling out in the garden. But whatever you're doing, Trusted Trader are always on hand to help. TrustedTrader.com have lots of really lovely tradespeople who are vetted, reviewed and reliable, unlike the weather. So for roofers who stop the rain coming in, gardeners for when the sun comes out, and other professionals in their trade, simply visit
TrustedTrader.com. Oh, look, my garden is bursting with colour. Shame it's mostly brown.
Head to B&Q and get those borders blooming. We've a great range of colourful spring bedding plants, like Easy Grow 9-pack violas or pansies at 4 for just £10. You can do it when you B&Q it. £3 per pack, in-store only.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say it to you, but maybe not Mum and Dad. I don't think they would be able to do that.
Really? I think Mum will help us. I spoke to her about it before.
Really? What did she say?
I just think she will help us if she can at the time.
If she can, though.
Yeah.
I don't know. Getting onto the property ladder seems like a million miles away.
It isn't easy talking to your family about money, but it is important. The M word from Lloyds Bank. It's good to talk about money.
Now on Little Spring Spotters, you join us as the family tuck into a traditional spring treat.
Hot cross buns. Once available for 1 a penny, sometimes 2 a penny, according to the nursery rhyme.
But now a very reasonable 75p for 6 at Lidl.
Yum. Lidl. Big on quality, little on price. Subject to availability. Selected stores. Excludes NI.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
I think a confirmatory referendum is an appalling idea, particularly if the choices are the European Union or Mrs May's treaty. I think it's an appalling idea. But some of you have been coming on, Remaina's been coming on, saying, well, actually, there's a better way of doing this. Give people a choice of 4. Justine Greening was one of the first people to put this idea out with saying there should be 3 options. But when I looked at it, it was like a 3-card trick. It would absolutely guarantee that actually, because of second preferences, some form of Remain actually would win. And there's 1 or 2 of you out there taking very much the same deal. You know, Nigel, there can't be more than 2 choices. If there are, they'll divide the leave vote. We're not Dumbos. And yes, I think that's right, they would, but also I don't think the Electoral Commission would allow it. I think a referendum has to be a clear choice. That's certainly my view. But tell me, do you think a second referendum is a good idea? You've hit the nail on the head. If London had voted leave, we would have gone already. Well, Andy, the figures are very clear. I mean, London is a very different place to the rest of England and Wales. Of that, there is no doubt at all. Philip is a first-time caller from London. Hi, Philip.
Hi, Nigel.
So
I'm living in London, but I'm actually from the northeast of England, so I kind of won't fall into that stereotype.
Right, okay. Now, are you a leaver or Remainer, Philip?
It was a very close call for me, but I ended up going for Remain, but I was very borderline. I was literally deciding as I walked into the booth.
All right, so you're not an ideologue on this in any way at all?
No, I think it's so much of a complicated argument that I think anyone who was very black and white on it probably isn't looking at the whole picture. But that's my point of view.
And did you go Remain in the end for safety?
I did.
Yeah, okay. So here we are, nearly 3 years on, with this extraordinary political impasse, and many of us, Philip, particularly on the Leave side, getting very, very angry, and a number of Remainers saying, hey, this is very bad for our democracy, what's going on. How would you feel about this idea of a confirmatory referendum?
So as you mentioned earlier, I think confirmatory is probably the wrong way to go because it's putting people into a corner. But I think if you could have a two-part referendum, where the first part was Remain or Leave,
yes,
and then the second part was whichever deal Conservatives and Labour can agree on, or no deal at all.
Yes.
And then it would take people through the whole process and hopefully bring it to an end as well, because I think, no doubt, that's what the majority of people want. But I think where no deal may be becoming more popular is just because people have had enough.
Yeah, well, and I wonder, Philip, I mean, if we had a second referendum, we vote to leave, and then the person who's voted leave goes to the next box down and votes no deal, do you think Parliament would respect the result of that referendum?
I think, I'm not a legislative expert, but surely there would be a way of getting Parliament to agree what went onto that referendum before the referendum was held.
Wow.
So it would be binding.
But it did that last time, Philip. Parliament agreed to the wording of the referendum last time. It was perfectly happy with it.
I know you will disagree on this, Nigel, but I honestly don't think the implications or the alternatives in the last referendum certainly weren't well known. And having such a binary choice
weren't well known.
Philip,
we had the Chancellor of the Exchequer telling us plagues of black locusts would descend upon our country. Obama telling us we're at the back of the queue. We were told we'd be living in caves, Philip. That bread would become. I mean, look, come on. We were given.
There's no doubt.
Come on, honestly.
Had a lot of falsehoods on that.
But you can't say.
I don't think either side really gives a fair and informed view.
All right, now, Philip. You tell me then. All right, fine. You tell me then, if it happened last time, why would the next campaign be any different?
You know what? That's where it comes down to hoping that Parliament have somehow learned some lessons. And I would love to believe that the next referendum, if you had choices which would actually come to a conclusion, they could start debating the implications of a no deal in more depth, the implications of a customs union in more depth, and the implications of Remain, we all know. But I Philip, certainly don't still...
Philip, at the end of the day...
I don't feel that informed on the implications on each of the sectors, whether it be industry...
But you could never know the implications fully, because you could never anticipate what future governments will do to alleviate them. Philip, I don't share your confidence in Parliament, but I thank you for the civility of that call. I'm sick of these people who think that democracy only works if you get the answer they want. WTO is not no deal, but people should be told what it is, says Carol from Shoreham. Well, we do talk no deal, but you're right, of course. It's World Trade Organization rules as a basis, and already lots of things have been agreed, such as aeroplanes flying in and out from Europe and all the rest of it. Let us go to Simon, who completes a full house of new callers tonight, and he's from Sheffield. Good evening, Simon.
How are you doing, Nigel? You okay?
We're doing all right, yes. Now, come on then. Are you going to convince me that this confirmatory referendum is the right way to go, Simon?
Well, essentially, you're going to have to get it out the hands of Parliament at the moment, and it seems to me that that is the only way that's going to get you any sort of potential worthwhile Brexit. If you had, similar to what your other callers have said tonight, you do need that other options on that paper, but it does have to be a simple binary choice. It does need to be Remain versus Leave, and Leave does need to, for me, have a subcategory with that, with how you want to leave. So that would be
And what about
deal?
And what about how you want to remain? So you vote Remain, you put United States of Europe or European Army. I mean, why would just Leave have other? I mean, Remain's not a static, is it?
It absolutely isn't. No. The only other part I would put to that is that for Remain to actually be proceeded with, if it won, it would have to exceed 53%, because that's the only way you can categorically say that the country changed its mind. So if you had 51, 52%, you've got to go back and reenact what the Leave vote was, and that would go to your second binary choice of no deal or Mrs May's deal.
But it is interesting. There's quite a lot of you out there now suggesting that we rerun effectively the same question, and then for Leave we have a second choice. Quite a lot of you. And Simon, let me ask you something. You know, let's say we have another referendum, and 60% vote to Leave, and a very clear majority also vote for no deal. Would our politicians respect that?
Again, you have to take it out of their hand. This would have to be a referendum that was final, that wasn't an advisory referendum.
Whoa! We'd have to change.
We'd
have to change. We had to change the British Constitution to do that, wouldn't we?
Well, good luck with that. But it's the only fair way. You're not going to get a worthwhile Brexit with the road we're going down right now. It's going to be the choice between the same thing, just rewritten in two different
Simon,
ways.
thank you. And there's one very good point Simon makes there. With this Parliament, it's very difficult to think we're going to get the Brexit we want unless it happens by accident. Well, I'll be back here on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. At 10 tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick. But up next, it's Ian Dale.
Nigel, thank you very much indeed. Now, for